Thank you very much for making this book launch possible, and thank you very much to Professor Chitty, to Professor Rawnsley, and to Professor G for for letting me write in this marvelous book. Okay, I shall begin with my presentation of my chapter, which is called "The Role of Film Authorism Within the Mechanism of Soft Power in Spain." And I analyzed the case of Carlos Saura as a representative of Spanish culture abroad. Okay. On 10th February of this year, Carlos Saura died at the age of 91, the day before he was to receive the honorary award for his entire career from the Spanish Film Academy. The tributes to his figure did not wait too long, and the Spanish government itself decided to incorporate Saura names into some of its initiatives. Okay, thus the Reform Conservation and Restoration Center, dependent of the National Film Library in Spain, was then renamed the Carlos Saura Center. This gives an idea of the status that this director achieved as a historical reference in Spanish cinema. This status, as I comment in my chapter, was not acquired passively with the passing of the years and the revision of his work by the public and the specialists. Rather, the relationship between Saura and Spanish culture in its most institutional aspect goes back several decades. My contribution to this volume deals with the role of cinema, and more specifically, auteur cinema in the development of soft power strategies in certain countries, in this case, Spain. I chose to focus on auteur cinema as it is the one that has historically had the highest presence on the international arena, and perhaps the one that has best conveyed a series of values more in line with the reputation that Spain has sought to disseminate abroad. In order to establish clearly the ways in which cinema can contribute to the promotion of a nation's soft power, I would like to mention a very old text written by the important Spanish journalist and film critic Mateo Santos Cantero in a popular film magazine during the times of the Second Republic. The text says, "It is sad that those who should be most interested in Spain's occupying a worthy place on the European film map are its most unconscious and bitter enemies. They have not realized that cinema, apart from being an industry as necessary as any other, is the most formidable means of propaganda in existence and the most efficient pedagogical text. A country without its own cinema renounces the expansion of its language, to show the world its architectural monuments and the beauty of its landscapes, to carry the palpitation of its social and political life throughout the world, to teach strangers our costumes and the characteristic of our race, and consequently encourages that false idea of Spanishness that prevails over the Pyrenees." As can be seen, the text is dominated by a clear nationalist ideology, including exaltations of the Iberian race. This may be surprising if we consider that Santos Cantero was an avowed anarchist, but even more remarkable is the accuracy with which the text lists the ways in which cinema can be useful in enhancing a country's reputation. As I pointed out in my chapter, I propose 4 great areas of action. 1, the promotion of language. 2, the possibility of acting as a showcase for tourism due to cinema's ability to spectacularize urban and natural landscapes. 3, the promotion of positive images concerning politics, civil society, and culture. And 4, countering negative stereotypes. These aspects could help create familiarity and even appreciation for a particular country abroad. But as authors such as Professor Chitty, Sun, or Rawnsley aptly note, these possibilities of cinema do not usually arise from a carefully planned initiative. There is a difference between actions carried out in a framework of cultural diplomacy and one of cultural relations. In the former, different state bodies articulate strategies to promote the country and reinforce its reputational image. In cultural relations, on the other hand, seek first and foremost to achieve artistic, economic, and civil objectives with no direct link to a country's foreign policy, although politics understood as ideology or as cultural state policies undoubtedly permeates these activities. Cinema is a clear example of cultural relations, which can occasionally be activated as part of a specific soft power strategy. In my chapter, I argue that auteur cinema has been a privileged way to build a positive images for Spain, or to take the ideas of Bobin to create and spread ideas of beauty and brilliance in the international arena. Moreover, as Bordwell and Thompson correctly put it, many countries with limited power, geopolitically speaking, or scarce cultural visibility, usually develop strategies of self-images through narratives involving national subject issues. Art or auteur cinema tends to involve these national narratives from its foundations, since auteurs are conceptualized as representative of a national culture in its most brilliant facet. It is clear that a great deal of Spanish film culture had to do, at least in the past, with the creative output of filmmakers such as Luis Buñuel, Carlos Saura, or Pedro Almodóvar. Nevertheless, it is also worth noting that the idea they conveyed about Spain was deeply critical with its politics and or its cultural conventions. We could argue also that many of its greatest successes were possible in spite of Spain, or at least despite Spanish cultural policies and state bodies of the time. Let us check some examples. For example, Luis Buñuel achieved Spain's greatest international recognition on the art house circuit with Viridiana, which won the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival in 1961. However, this co-production with Mexico, with which Buñuel, returning to his homeland after more than 2 decades of exile, was a far from subtle mockery of all the national Catholic tenets of Franco dictatorial regime, which by then ruled the country. The film's triumph, far from bringing prestige to Franco's government, served to give more acclaim to the Spanish exile and produce a strong tension with some of its strategic allies, such as the Vatican. The same could be said of Saura, whose films of the 60s and 70s were highly critical to the situation in Spain under Franco's regime. Far from being worried, the Francoist authorities were willing to tolerate, always up to a certain point, of course, the film practice of Saura and other directors such as Mario Camus, Francisco Regueiro, or Basilio Martín Patino, as long as the films could circulate in major international film festival under the label of New Spanish Cinema, Nuevo Cine Español. An authorist canon of prestige was thus cultivated and allowed by the regime, but only outdoors. Saura was faced with the paradox of creating a cinema critical of the main institution of his country, which nevertheless boasted of democratic openness thanks to the production and circulation of that same cinema. For his part, Pedro Almodóvar began to be successful in the 1980s, a period marked by a cinema heavily subsidized by the Spanish state with the aim of promoting a model of quality. However, Almodóvar's cinema, in terms of narrative and aesthetic features, did not fit with this quality model, and its financing came either from underground circuit or from self-production through his company El Deseo Producciones Cinematográficas. Therefore, the attempt by the socialist elites during the 1980s and 1990s to export quality cinema found that the best received model abroad was one created on the margin of its cultural policies. These three examples should make us realize that although institutional action and artistic practice are intimately linked, the relationship is very ambivalent, and the results of this interaction are quite unpredictable, not fitting the agenda of either filmmakers or states or state entities. With this in mind, the practice of a filmmaker like Carlos Saura, an undisputed exponent of Spanish culture for both Spain and abroad, can be analyzed. And like Almodóvar, after Franco's death, Saura received strong support from Spanish cultural institutions who funded a career which, until the 90s, enjoyed many successes abroad, although it made little impact in Spain. He filmed prestigious commissions, such as the medium-length musical documentary Sevillanas, made to be screened during the Expo 92 at the Universal exhibition in Seville. That same year, after the resignation of English filmmaker Hugh Hudson, Saura was commissioned to shoot the official film of the Barcelona Olympic Games marathon. The musical films he made in this period were particularly sorry were particularly important to us, dealing with popular and regional traditions such as flamenco, the sevillana, or the jota dance, with a minimalist and metafilmic aesthetic approach. Likewise, his biopics of figures such as San Juan de la Cruz, Luis Buñuel, or Francisco de Goya drew a canon of a progressive, innovative Spain. The content and the force of Saura Sebre is of great interest for Spanish political institutions, especially those who promote Spanish culture abroad using the circuits of cultural diplomacy and occasional cultural relations. I chose 3 state bodies which still nowadays have great relevance in the dissemination and promotion of Spanish country image through its cultural heritage and contemporary repertoire. These state bodies, who could be termed as multipliers according to Professor Chitty, are Instituto Cervantes, AECID, and Acción Cultural Española, ACE. I will delve on these 3 state bodies very soon. The Instituto Cervantes is maybe the most important of the three bodies. It was founded in 1991, a time in which Spain tried its best to project the country internationally. It is a body similar to the Alliance Française, the Goethe Institute, or the British Council, whose main task is the dissemination and teaching of national languages and culture throughout the world, and despite being part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Spain, has autonomous legal personality. The operation of the Instituto Cervantes aids of the Instituto Cervantes sites exists his theoretical attributions as a center for Spanish language teaching and research. Rather, they function as cultural centers with extensive activities and collaboration with economic and social agents in the cities where they are based. Cinema plays an important role in the activities of the Cervantes sites. Film screenings, retrospectives, Q&As, organization of film festival conform one of the most attractive cultural offers of local population. The Instituto Cervantes, that has the greatest weight in the international circulation of Saura's films, the presence of Saura, whether as an author or more interestingly as a representative of Ibero-American culture, a very important aspect for Spanish authorities from the 19th onwards has been to create a strong cultural bond with Ibero-American countries, is overwhelming, with more than 900 activities in the different centers. Of these, we find like 100 film retrospectives, 68 of which are completely dedicated to Saura. Almost all of the more than 50 titles that currently make up the director's filmography have passed through the different venues of the IC around the world. You can see here some examples of the centers and the activities that are deployed in these centers. They are very varied. Okay, let's talk about AECID, which is the acronym of Spanish Agency for the Development Cooperation. That is the oldest organization involved in cultural diplomacy. In its current form, it is the refoundation of the Institute for Ibero-American Cooperation created in 1979. It is attached to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Spain and has also an important bond to Latin American countries, as you can see with the title of Institute of Ibero-American Cooperation. The main activity related to cinema is the creation by the Department of Cultural and Scientific Relations of the Spanish Cinema Abroad program. This initiative depends on a big repository of films, the film library of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. These include around 300 feature and short films, which could be termed as the canon made by the AECID of Spanish cinema. The film library provides to different entities, such as embassies, cultural centers, or film exhibition and festivals all over the world. Saura is one of the most consistently present directors in the program, only after Luis García Berlanga, filmmaker of, for example, Plácido or The Hangman. His presence varies between 6 and 11 films in each annual catalogue, which are distributed in different retrospectives or groupings proposals suggested by AIIA, with topics such as history of Spain, current affairs, documentary, women on the spotlight, or flamenco dance and singing. Nowadays, the film catalogue of AIIA hosts the right of 6 films by Carlos Saura, which makes him, again, one of the favorite filmmakers for AIIA, way ahead of other important figures like Luis Buñuel, Pedro Almodóvar, or Juan Antonio Bardem. The catalogue, as can be seen, indicates the format of screening of the movie and also the countries with restriction of copyright. For example, Goya and Burdeos cannot be projected in Italy or the States. Finally, let us talk about Acción Cultural Española, Spanish Cultural Action, that was born in 2010 due to the merging of 3 previous entities: the State Society for Cultural Action Abroad, the Spanish Society for Cultural Commemorations, and the State Society for International Exhibitions. This merge was following the austerity policies in Spanish public spending after the financial crisis of 2008. Spanish Cultural Action is the only one of these institutional bodies analyzed that combine both cultural diplomacy and cultural relations. Its main goal is to promote the circulation of artists and the proposal it makes to cultural managers and curators from all over the world through 5 sections, each of which deals with a specific artistic area. As you can see, performing arts, literature and books, music, visual arts, and film, cinema. The instrument that Acción Cultural Española has been using since 2013 to disseminate and promote Spanish culture is the PICE grants. PICE is the acronym for Program for the Internationalization of Spanish Culture. In the area of cinema, Carlos Saura has been a regular beneficiary of this grant due to his status as a canonical classic filmmaker and is this year one of the few still active in the Spanish film scene. An examination of these 3 institutions provides an overview of the use of cinema by foreign diplomacy agencies. These entities select films on the basis of a prestigious and authorized canon, as well as on the endorsing of values of respect, tolerance, freedom, and cosmopolitanism. Some of the features that make Saura's films of interest to these multipliers, and we could say to many others Spanish or Latin American films, are the representation of national history and folklore, 2, the representation of the insertion of Spain in transnational dynamics, specifically those involving other Ibero-American countries, and the 3rd, features of an art cinema with Spanish accent and a liberal anti-authoritarian political stance. It is possible that many of the information included in my contribution are out of date. Thus, for example, the preponderance of the author in the promotion of Spanish current cinema, which is debatable. These new trends have emerged, such as films by female filmmakers or more experimental semi-documentary features, which have attracted considerable international attention on major festivals. In addition, Spanish cinema has probably managed to increase its market power considerably in recent decades, so that important commercial streams have emerged through which Spanish cinema have become much more present in foreign countries. For example, horror and thrillers with local accent have become favorite in genres due to their good reception in the Far East or in the USA. The rise of television production and content for new online platforms is also a factor to be considered in order to qualify the importance of cinema in Spain, country image, and forms of soft power. Neither external action agencies solely responsible for the circulation of films abroad. Commercial companies such as sales agents, which have been consolidated in Spain since the 2000s, the beginning of the 2010s, play a fundamental role in this regard. On the other hand, state bodies such as the Institute of Audiovisual Arts and Sciences, the ICAA, or the ICEX, the Institute for Foreign Trade in Spain, have increased their relevance in recent years in terms of promoting Spanish cinema. Moreover, the COVID pandemic and the economic cutbacks to which organizations such as AIIA have been subjected have reduced the resources and therefore their capacity for action. Nevertheless, these organizations continue to play a valuable role in creating familiarity, interest, and admiration for Spanish culture, as I was able to see for myself just a month ago when I took part in one of the activities sponsored by the Instituto Cervantes. You can see me in Beirut. As part of several tributes to Saura after his passing, different venues of the Cervantes Institute, in collaboration with consulates and embassies, organize special activities on his work, on his filmography. The Cervantes Institute of Beirut, in Lebanon, invited me as a researcher focused in Saura's filmography to give a lecture at the Alba University, which is the acronym for Académie Libanaise des Beaux-Arts, as part of a retrospective offered to the students as well as to the general audience. I was able to attend from 16 to 19 October the screenings and discussion of 4 films by Saura, which were provided by the AIIA Film Library, always with the collaboration of the Spanish Embassy. I remember with particular interest the screening of I, Carmela, which the political counselor of the embassy and I introduced to the public. The film is one of Saura's most popular in Spain, and not very well known abroad. It tells the tragicomic story of a variety troupe in the bleak years of the Spanish Civil War, with a vision somewhere between tenderness and cruelty. One of the first sequences, quite representative of the atmosphere of the movie, showed the main characters performing in front of a battalion of anarchists. The show, funny and unrestrained, must stop dead in its tracks when they hear the rumble of German airplanes, which are likely to bomb the military outpost. The silence of the sequence was similar in the university venue, and frankly, the delegate and I were taking a deep breath, feeling that the movie was not the best choice to offer in a country that nowadays is in the middle of a rampant economic and political crisis and seems after the Hamas-Israel conflict on the brink of war. However, surprisingly for us, the students showed at the end of the screening a singular enthusiasm for the film, which for them was a real lesson in how to approach the most traumatic events from a humanistic and critical point of view without losing certain aesthetic values. The movie, which approaches the great trauma of the Spanish Civil War from an accessible and sentimental point of view, was a favorite for the young Lebanese students, who even expressed the admiration for making films that, according to them, showed the degree of maturity of a society, the Spanish society, that had learned how to look at its most painful conflict with wisdom and humanism. Well, as a Spaniard, I am not so sure about the social and cultural overcoming of Spanish Civil War as many issues in Spanish politics nowadays demonstrate. But I appreciated the insights of the students very much, as they fell in love with a national culture that they perceive as desirable and worthy of admiration. I cannot think of a best example of soft power conveyed through cinema. And that's all. Thank you very much for your attention and your patience. I am at your disposal to answer any question or suggestion that you may have.